Good afternoon. Imagine a world without bees. Be no big deal, we just have to do without the honey. Yeah? Well, it's more significant than that. The bee that produces honey is just the honeybee. And in fact, that's only one of 20,000 different species of bees that there are in the world. And in fact, there are more species of bees than there are of birds. Okay? And bees are also just one of many, many things known as pollinators. They're animals that actually pollinate plants and allow them to grow. You probably knew that. You may not have known, though, that 77% of the global food that we need and we produce depends on pollinators. And if you think about that, that's 2 in every 3 mouthfuls of food that you take depends on pollinators. That equates to somewhere around $577 billion worth annually of worth of global food produced. But it's not just about food, is it, Severe?
No. The fact is that if we had no bees, this is the scenario we'd be faced with. Because bees not only pollinate food, bees are responsible for 1.5 billion jobs, livelihoods in the world. Bees pollinate around 87% of the flowering species of plants and trees we have in the world. This means that bees provide us with the oxygen we need to survive. This is something we don't often think about, but plants and trees, of course, through the process of photosynthesis, provide our planet with oxygen.
So there's a problem, though, because as people are quite aware, I guess, that there is a decline in the number of bees on the planet, right? And that decline is quite stark. 25% reduction in honeybees alone in Europe. That's in the last 20, 25 years. But more significantly, in certain areas, it's worse. So 40% of the honeybees have declined in the US, and that's since 2008. And in the UK, a massive 45% decline in honeybees just in the last 8 years. Now, in many cases, we know the reasons behind that decline, don't we, Severe?
Yes, we do. So we know that the decline in pollinators is due to single crop farming. It's due to over-intensification of agriculture. It's due to fragmentation of flowering habitats. It's also due to our ever-increasing global population. Yes.
Growth in population.
Yes, yeah, growth in population.
That's right, but we don't necessarily know all the reasons for the decline. And there are questions out there that remain unanswered. And I think that's what led you to form the World Bee Project, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So I created the World Bee Project as a community interest company because this problem of pollinator decline and food insecurity concerns the human community. It concerns each one of us. But in order to move ahead and to find solutions to this crisis, I realized that we needed a foundation and underpinning of science, of scientific evidence. So after establishing the World Bee Project, I reached out to Professor Simon Potts, and I understand in Hebrew this word means someone quite silly, but in the case of Professor Simon Potts, he's probably the world's leading authority on pollinator decline and on agriculture. And he's the head of the School of Agriculture and Biodiversity at the University of Reading, which is the UK's #1 university and which ranks 10th in the world. And then after that, of course, science alone isn't enough. So I met with Oracle, as you know, Andy.
So it's important to underpin the project with a scientific background, but then in order to have a positive scientific effect, you need to underlie it with technology and you need to underlie it with data. So this is where we came in with our partnership with the World Bee Project. And what we're working with the World Bee Project to do is to gather data into the Oracle Cloud, into an autonomous database that we can then use the Oracle data science, things that, around artificial intelligence and machine learning on that data in order to actually look for new insights and to try and answer some of the unanswered questions that still remain there behind the pollinator decline. But again, it's not just about having the technology and data and lots of it. It's important where that data comes from, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So if we look at this map, which was produced by the University of Reading, we see the different regions around the world that are affected or that relate to, that depend on, where agriculture depends on pollination. And so this is why our interest is in the regions of the world, because pollinator relationships with their environment can vary from region to region. And this is another reason why after launching in the UK, we were very happy to launch in Israel very recently, because this region represents something quite different from the United Kingdom, of course. And we are particularly excited because we are hoping to create a collaboration with the University of Tel Aviv and with the Ahava Institute in southern Israel. And what particularly interests us about, say, the approach of Tel Aviv University and specifically Ahava Institute is its transboundary strategy, its transboundary approach, because of course bees and pollinators have no boundaries.
So what we're looking to do, let's just drill down a bit more specifically in terms of what are we doing. As Sabir mentioned, what we're doing then is to gather data from different regions, and what we're doing is to gather, we're basically connecting to beehives using sensors to gather data such as temperature, humidity, weight, etc., and significantly acoustic data, which I'm going to come back to in a second. But the real power that we're looking to bring here, and the real differentiator, is to then overlay that with other data that's freely available. So data around weather and local habitats and even local practices, so that we can start to compare those hives and those colonies that are thriving with those ones in regions where we're having bigger problems, as you saw on the previous slide. Okay, so we're doing that, as I say, by gathering that data and overlaying it. But if I can just drill down a little bit further and maybe just give you a few examples of some of the insights we can already find, okay, so, and then we'll move on to what we don't know. The first thing, just to give you an idea of the kind of a sound analysis we can do. So the graph on the left, as you're looking there, is the sound that bees make in a healthy hive. And you can tell an enormous amount from about the behavior of bees, from the noise they make, and a lot about their relationship with their surrounding habitat and environment. And without going into too much detail, you can basically see that over a period of time, the different frequencies and decibels is fairly, uniform and doesn't change over a short period of time. It will change gradually. Whereas an unhealthy hive, the one on the right here, is a hive that's actually got a disease known as nosema, which is a form of bee dysentery. And you can see that it's much more of a random shape. Now, if hives aren't being monitored manually all the time, 100% of the time, this kind of picking up this kind of data and being able to send alerts could help beekeepers to go and take action. So that's one example, is sound and acoustic data, and that's very exciting, and we think we can do a lot more with that. Another example of that would be the area of bee swarming. Now, a bee swarm is a perfectly natural activity. I used to present this as an unnatural thing, and Sabir corrected me. It's something that bees do naturally at different times in the year, particularly once a year normally, once they've grown too big for the hive they're in, and a proportion of the bees leave the hive with the existing queen and find somewhere else to live, leaving the remaining bees to actually sustain that colony with a new queen. Why is that significant? Well, it's significant if they swarm at the wrong time of the year. So if they swarm for another reason, like they're under threat from a pest or disease or whatever else, okay? And if you can get some notice that that's about to happen, then again, you can potentially take some action, sorry. Also, economically, a beekeeper might want to encourage the natural swarm, but capture that swarm and go into another managed hive, if you like, so that they keep their production of honey increasing, etc. If that makes sense. But you can actually get notice of this through looking at the acoustics. So the one on the left, again, is a stable hive. The one on the right, you can gradually see from the start of the sound here, a trough appearing in the waveform. This is known as a warble, all right? And this is from the start of a hive looking to swarm to when they actually eventually end up swarming, okay? And that time is about 21 days. So you can get 20 days notice that a hive might be swarming and be prepared and take some sort of action. So those are things we kind of already know. Another example, that's acoustic data, might be around visual data. So this is a film, a brief film of a bee in the middle there, you can see, doing what's known as a waggle dance. Okay? This is only a half of it. Typically it's a figure of 8. And what they do this in the hive to communicate with the rest of the bees where a source of food is, where they can go and gather pollen and nectar and bring it back to the hive. Why is that significant? Well, once again, what a beekeeper or someone managing the hives could do would be able to use it if we could monitor this and see it and make sure that those sources, where they are, how far away they are from the hives, whether they're sustainable, whether they need to take any action to make sure they've still got plenty of food sources available to them. So again, another area we know how they behave, but we can potentially use and give action to a beekeeper. This is just going into an area as an example of something we maybe don't know. So there's another form of communication between the bees, a thing was referred to as chatting, where two bees come together and attach their antennae, and they hold that communication together for a period of time. We don't know what they're saying, and at the moment we don't know exactly why. The thing on the left is just gathering. Each dot is a bee, all right, and each line is another connection with another bee where they're connected, and the darkness of the line indicates how long they're connected for, okay? The one on the right, though, is where we've taken, using Oracle Analytics on the data in the cloud, to actually analyze that over the frequency, how long they're staying together and chatting. And you can see that they actually happens much more frequently for short periods of time. And what we've done is we've mapped this onto a typical Twitter feed. And when you look at a Twitter feed, it maps very similar to how human behavior behave on a Twitter. And that tends to be that you have spikes around certain events. So we believe that bees are chatting around certain events. We just don't know what those events are. So we can use this to further analysis, actually, to start to find insights about why this is happening in certain environments and what time. So that's a sample, an example of the kind of things we're doing and we think we can go on to do later. Sabia, perhaps you'd like to wrap up and talk about what value you think this might bring going forward.
Well, firstly, I think what Andy, what Oracle are bringing in is new insights, new understandings. Because without these new understandings and insights, we cannot hope to rectify the crisis we face. Because the crisis we face, it has been made by us. It hasn't been inflicted on us by aliens from outer space. There hasn't been a nuclear war. So only we humans are responsible for this situation where we are slowly destroying the planet and destroying our own chances of survival. But there is hope. Also with Oracle, we are creating STEAM education programs for children. So the younger generation continues the job we are desperately trying to begin now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.